Try Jesus. Try Jesus. Try Jesus. Try Jesus. He's the way. Try Jesus. The truth, the life. Try Jesus.
What's up, Auburn? Pastor Crespo here. What do you do when a spiritual leader betrays the trust of the people he's leading? What happens when someone does not live up to the very things that they preach about? Should they be disqualified? Should they go away forever? Should they even be forgiven? We're going to talk about that in this episode. Welcome to the podcast. Pastor Claudio Gomez is with me today. Not only a colleague, but also pastor of the Union Springs Seventh-day Adventist Church. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure to be able to spend this time with you and also to talk about this interesting topic today.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're back because it gives me a do-over. You know, when we did that Christmas episode, I mentioned the podcast before that I had that Christmas hat on,
Yeah.
and the ball had that white fluffy stuff, and I ended up inhaling a bunch of it. So I got my water today, but I don't have my hat, so we should be good to go.
We should be good to go. Very good. Very good.
All right, so today we're talking about what came out in the news really just recently here, and that is a very popular Christian author, editor of a magazine. His name is Philip Yancey. Philip Yancey, I had some information here on him. Let's see. He's a prolific author. His writings have sold millions of books. Over the years, he's interviewed 2 U.S. presidents, high-profile figures in the world, in the U.S. He even interviewed and spoke with Billy Graham. His books, I think, let's see, 2 of his most famous books. One is The Jesus I Never Knew, and What's So Amazing About Grace. When we're talking about book sales, his book sales we're talking about not hundreds, thousands.
Wow.
His books have sold millions. And so he recently came out with this news of an affair. Did you hear about that? Did you get a chance to look into that?
I was able to follow and read and find out a little bit more about who he was and the things that he was able to accomplish. It's amazing when you think and you look at his ministry, right? It's unique in that not everybody can write and speak and do sermons and be well known. I
Right.
think it's amazing, but just because you're up there in the top, that doesn't mean things cannot happen, right? Any of us are subject to that at some point. But
Right.
in this particular case, I think is a lesson for us to learn out of this and to hopefully I think today is going to be great. Just talking about that situation and how can we learn some things from it.
Right. That's the goal. I think as I read, let me share with you a couple of excerpts from the article and from their statements. So I want to just bring that up here. This is the statement from Philip Yancey, or this is a portion of the statement. So he says, to my great shame, I confess that for 8 years I willfully engaged in a sinful affair with a married woman. My conduct defied everything that I believe about marriage. It was also totally inconsistent with my faith and my writings and caused deep pain for her husband and both of our families. When I first saw this, I don't know if you had some of the same thoughts. There are some thoughts that came to my mind about his statement. He actually, in his statement, also says that his actions have disqualified him from ministry.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering, I know that, we've both been pastoring a long time. And when you get into ministry, you unfortunately deal with situations like this where you get that phone call, hey, I'm calling you. I just found out news that my spouse was unfaithful. And there are a few things I think that break a person's heart more. I mean, the most tenderest part of your heart, your life, you invest in the other person, and then this comes out.
Yeah.
Is there anything that struck you about his statement?
Well, definitely, yeah. When he's reflecting, because that's exactly what he's doing. He's reflecting and what he did. He is in full acknowledgement of how hurt he is, and also the people he has hurt as well. So that it's interesting when you think about it. It hurts. It hurts just to read it. It hurts Because again, he's in full acknowledgement and of what he did. But one of the things that really caught my attention when he says, "I confess," I confess. There's a lot of people who, unfortunately, that go out there and they spend the time years and they never have this. They will never come to a point that
Repentance.
the repentance that I did
Yeah,
something
yeah.
wrong. I should confess. So if there's, and again, different things that I can take away. One of it is, first of all, I would like to say that he's very brave, right? Because
Yeah.
a lot of pastors, a lot of leaders in different positions. We can talk about pastors, but we can talk about leaders and who represent government, represent places and people in different regions, and they do things that are not according to what they believe or
Right,
what they're supposed
right.
to do, right? They don't follow up onto that, what is expected of from them. But yes, they move on and they keep doing things for years,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
never recognize and say, I have done things wrong. I think it's time for me to stop and acknowledge that. So first of all, I need to say that he was very brave to say that, right? And so that's the first thing. And the other thing that really I've been thinking about is that the reality is that just because you serve in the church environment, just because you preach about God, that doesn't mean that you are exempt of failure. You know what I'm saying? That I have been thinking about that a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you can spend years. He has been,
50 plus years, I
50
think.
plus years
Yeah.
of ministry.
Yeah.
And you would think that by that time, you're not only preaching about God, God is walking with you, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
you, you would like to say that.
Yeah.
I know God from experience. I have been 50 years, 40 years,
Yeah.
but that does not define a deep relationship with God. All of us could fail at any moment.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
that's the only thing that I take from that, is a lesson that we need to keep in mind. We cannot pretend that we are so perfect,
Yeah.
or that we already arrived, in the sense
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
there's nothing else for me to learn. I have all the spiritual knowledge that I need to make it. Well,
Right.
the
Right.
reality is, based on this story, is
Yeah.
that we all need, that God to help us every single
Right.
day. It does not matter how long you have been doing ministry. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing, being in a leadership position. All of us need to be humble. All of us need to be able to open our hearts every day to God.
Right.
So that's for me one
you,
of the
you
few
bring
things
up
that I
something
think.
interesting, and I wasn't thinking about. I mean, I was thinking about this, but this isn't the direction that I wanted to go. But you brought up something that I thought was good, that I wanted to kind of follow a little bit, and that is that none of us are exempt from temptation,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
And so that's why we have to guard ourselves. So
Yes.
it's almost like, what happens when a person falls into this situation? And I say fall, they step into it. It's not like it's not like you trip and you have an affair.
Exactly,
It's just
exactly.
you choose.
Yeah.
But the idea being that if you know that can happen, right? And you need to be able to make some decisions about your own behavior,
That's right.
your conduct. I know you do the same thing. I don't meet alone with women. I
Yes,
don't
yes,
study.
yes.
I don't study alone. If
Yeah.
I'm doing a Bible study, I don't study alone with a woman.
Yeah.
And so there are things that you just, my wife knows.
Yeah. We
Uh,
call it now and then, we set boundaries, right?
yeah,
You set
yeah,
boundaries,
yeah,
how you do, and there's different things. Again, and if you're, whoever's watching, this is not just for how you guard yourself from pastoral ministry or any form of ministry or leadership, but also
life.
Exactly, life, how you interact with others.
Yeah.
You go onto social media. There are a lot of people who are interacting,
Yeah.
sending text messages,
Right.
and talking with minors and talking with, we see in the news all the time, and
Yeah.
maybe we do an episode on that one day, how teachers and, are doing things with their students.
Yeah. That's,
They don't know how to stop. They don't know how to put boundaries. And I feel like we need to set our boundaries,
Yeah.
the time to reach out to, young people. You want to be careful.
Yeah.
I know there are a lot of young people out there who have questions and they have doubts, and they
Right.
are looking for somebody to look up to. But you want to be careful how you reply to them,
Right.
what time you use to.
Those are
talk to
boundaries
them.
you have to set.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
God, of course, is there to help us,
Right.
but we are responsible, to guard our, our boundaries, to set our
That's
boundaries
right.
as well.
So
Yeah.
this episode, for those who may be watching, I think maybe two types of people may be watching, right? So one is a person that hasn't stepped out of their marriage vow,
Mhm.
but you need to understand that it can happen to you.
Of course.
And so you need, as you say, you have to set boundaries.
Yeah.
There are things that I'm not going to do. You have a coworker, I don't know if you've heard the phrase, "This is my work wife." And if you're
Yes,
people,
yes, yes.
so when we're at work, we always joke around, we talk, and it's sometimes said in a harmless way, but I don't know that
Yeah.
if my wife said, "Oh, this is my work husband,"
Yeah.
I would say, "Excuse me."
There's some things that you don't play with.
Right.
That is one of them.
But the idea of developing those close relationships with people can lead to places you don't want to go. But then there's the other part. If there's somebody that's watching today who messed up, you made a bad decision, and you use the word bravery, it's like, I'm too scared. I'm gonna lose everything.
That's right.
And so there's not just the physical or the relational things here, but then we're talking about the relational stuff this way.
Yeah.
That you now are lying, and you're going to have to answer to God for what you do, because it's not only impacting your family, but your relationship with Him. What can, we want you to get something out of this episode, because number one, let's say number one, be brave. You got to be brave.
Yeah. You have
And there's, if you got into it, you need to get out of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to ask a question here, and then maybe later on we can get into the wife's response, because she actually issued. So Philip Yancey issued a statement, a confession of his sin. For me, the thing that came out to me, so let me go back to that first. What came out to me out of that statement is that, how many times do people make a confession but make an excuse for the problem? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. They try to justify why they.
Yeah, there's some form of, and what struck me about his statement is like, nope, what I did was wrong. What I did didn't line up with what I wrote about, what I believed in, what I preached about, and I've disqualified. I mean, he was like completely like, no excuses.
Yeah.
I was wrong. And I found that I don't know, just something struck me. We don't see a lot of that. There's always some reason. We'll blame an addiction like drugs or alcohol, or or even politicians say, well, I did that, but that's not me. It was just a bad judgment moment. And so that's their way of saying, bloop, this popped up, bloop, it's gone, and let's go back to normal. He didn't do that.
He didn't do that. That's
And so that to me was tough. But let me ask you a question now. This gentleman, over the last 8 years, and by the way, he's 75. For those of you that may think that people in their 70s don't do these things, the libido, it doesn't go away.
That's right.
And for some, it's stronger than others. But that's another topic for
another time.
But so this guy was reading. I'm sorry, he was writing, speaking, traveling, doing ministry for 8 years while he had this thing going on. And so, what do you do with now his content, the writings? So, I have 2 questions for you. I'm hoping you can we can talk a little bit about. Well, the one question is, first of all, he stepped away and he canceled everything. So he basically went into retirement. So the first question is, was he right to do that, or should he just have confessed and just kept going because of the quote benefit that he's bringing to the world through his writings? Number one. Number two is, what do we do with all his books and things now? Should we like erase him from what we read now? Do we not look at him? What do you do with that? Because some of the stuff he did and said was while he was living this double life. How do you handle that? Should he have stepped down? Let's do that question first. Do you think it was right for him to step away?
Well, it's amazing when we think about this. I believe he did the right thing, stepping down, because he's in full acknowledgement of what he did. He recognizing what I did was wrong. I cannot move forward with this. And I think at the end of the day, this has to be, it's a personal relationship between you and God. And you need to know, when is the time to say, to confess to everybody, I did wrong. I want to make it right with God. And again, I go back to what I just shared, that I feel like he was very brave, because I can just imagine how many people look up to him, how many followers that he has. The people who were blessed by the books and that and the sermons and everything. But he was like, I cannot think about that right this moment. I need to think about my relationship with God. So I believe stepping down instead of leading people, because he was broken. You know,
Yeah.
leading people when you are broken is not easy. There are people who can do it
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
while,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
sooner or later, you're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah.
crush down at some
Yeah,
point.
yep.
So he was broken. He acknowledged that, hey, I'm broken. I'm confessing to everyone that what I did. So he was able to come to, clean with that, in his mind. I
Yeah.
need to confess. I need to step down. I don't feel it.
But how do you then, because I agree
Yeah,
with you.
yeah.
I agree with you. But how do you connect that with the story in the Bible about David and Bathsheba?
Yes.
So just for those
Yeah,
that, if you're not familiar
yeah.
with the story in the Bible about David and Bathsheba, David was the king of Israel. This is the David that killed Goliath, with the
Mhm.
sling, whoop, hit him in the head. But the Bible says that he committed adultery. And this guy didn't just commit adultery, right?
Yeah.
He committed adultery, got her pregnant, and in order to cover up the fact that he got her pregnant, he had her husband killed in battle, so no one would ever know. But then he was found out. But he did not step down as king. So I'm there. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
I'm more just wondering, because I agree he should step down today. If today we had a pastor that was involved in a situation like this,
Mhm.
he would be removed.
Yeah, yeah.
So what, I mean, have you thought about that?
Yeah.
What do you think? Help me understand it, because maybe that's just a question
No,
I
no, no.
have.
I think it's a great question, but at the same time, yeah, he not stepped down, but there were consequences of the things that he did. You see what I'm saying? So, um, not stepping down, that doesn't mean that he did not suffer consequences of what he did, right? There are consequences of what, and we see in the Bible, one of his child died, he family suffered, so there are consequences when you don't do things the right way. So again, I told you that, and we can see that from David as a king, that there are people who can move forward even when they're broken, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that there will be no consequences to that.
Yeah.
So for some people, the idea of stepping down, I have to do it. I need to walk away. I'm not that type of leader. I just need to be true to myself
Yeah.
and stepping down. David was going through that experience. He did not step down, but the consequences of what he did are there,
Yeah.
and he suffered a lot.
Yeah.
His family was completely destroyed, bad choices left and right.
Yeah.
So
I think he lost 3 sons
he lost 3 sons. Yeah,
total. Yeah.
and the fighting and the argument, and it was not easy, right? So there's consequences of it. So would stepping down was the right thing? Definitely
Yeah.
for Philip, right? Uh, Again, David did not step down, but the consequences of what he did
Yeah.
are there, and I
Yeah.
think this is something that we need to keep in mind as well.
There's a deeper thing, and this would be a topic for another day, because I think it's deep. But I think, I think what he did was, is it possible to use the word noble for an adulterer? I don't know, but it was good for him to step down. He
Yeah.
needed to do that for his
Yeah.
family. David stayed, but one of the positive, even if we don't understand fully,
Mhm.
but one of the positive lessons is when you do something really bad, God doesn't throw you away.
That's right. That's right.
God does, and that's a lesson
Yeah.
to take from this
Yeah.
episode. When you do something really bad, something you wish you could erase from the minds of everyone,
Mhm.
including your own,
Yeah.
God does not throw you away, and that, I think, is a lesson in that story. Although, you know, you need to, this gentleman, he did the right thing,
Mhm.
but it's just an interesting issue there. So, second question:
Yeah.
should we read his books anymore? And let me just back that up with a little
Yeah.
bit here. I believe, and I don't want to, if I'm wrong, forgive me, but I believe there was a popular Christian singer. I want to say it was Amy Grant.
Mm.
Amy Grant was like a Christian. I don't know that she sings anymore, but she was a Christian star, and it was maybe Christian pop or Christian rock or whatever it was. Very, very popular. When it came out that she had an affair, the radio stations dropped her music, dropped her.
Mm.
Bill Cosby, y'all know Bill Cosby, The Cosby Show, and to in the United States, to people of color, Bill Cosby, The Cosby Show was like a staple. Everybody knew who the show, and the show did like family values, a lot of funny comedy. But Bill Cosby was convicted of rape.
Mm. Mhm.
He would drug women, and I mean, And so they took the Cosby Show off.
Oh.
And actually, if you see any type of things on video, now they renamed them from the Cosby Show to the Huxtables.
Mm.
So he was like, when you make a
Yeah.
mistake, they get
Yeah.
rid of everything.
Yeah.
What do we do with his books and writings? How do you, again, there's no wrong answer
No,
here.
definitely.
I just, how are you processing that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And here it is. It's actually in the Bible. The Bible says that when God says something, his word will never come void.
Mm-hmm.
God will always bless his word.
Oh,
So even if I'm, let me say it like this, God is able and he's so powerful that he can use broken people to deliver a wonderful message. So
we're gonna have to make that a short. Say it again into the camera.
you're probably gonna say it for me, but the reality is that God is able and willing, and he's so powerful to use broken people to make people whole. I can be broken
Yeah.
right now, and I can speak it to you. I can be saying something that you feel like, oh man, that word is something that I need. What encouragement. But I'm broken inside, but God is still using me
Oh man.
to say something
That's
powerful. And I believe that's what we need to think when we consider his
poderoso. That's powerful, man.
when we consider his books, when we consider what he wrote and in sermons, it's like, is any blessing in there?
Yeah.
Can I see God's blessing in through the message? And let's put aside the messenger.
Yeah.
But what about the message? And I think if we are able to put aside one from another, separate the messenger from the message, I think we will have the answer. Applying wisdom to that is I think instead of being just trying to be a judge, right? But let's apply wisdom. Can we have some blessing out of this?
So for those of you that are watching, I would love to hear your take on this. So put it in the comments. Was it right for Philip Yancey to step down from speaking and writing? And 2, should we discard his content, the speeches and the books that he's written, or should we continue as you mentioned something that God uses broken people to make people whole?
That's right.
That's great.
Well,
that needs to become a short. That needs to go viral.
I don't know about that, but the reality is that at some point, we have been dealing with being broken, in one way or another. Yeah. Sometimes when we are preaching, when we are talking, it's like we don't feel like I'm equipped sometimes, right? But God says, I'm glad that you're feeling like that, because in my hands you are enough.
There's times of discouragement, even if you haven't, something like this is very like tragic, and it rises to what I would say like a really, really bad thing. But it doesn't have to be that bad. Some things in life you can just be discouraged about, and then you're supposed to speak.
Yeah.
You're supposed to teach, and it's like, Lord, I got nothing.
Yeah. But so, and there's another thing that I have been thinking I want to just share with you. How many other pastors and leaders are going through the same thing? And they're not being forward. They're not being honest with God and their spouses.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I believe this story could provide an opportunity for other pastors to say, I need to say something to my wife, to my family, to my church, to my people who follow me. I need to say something, So if anything, I feel like he's saying, and he says that in the statement that he's disqualifying himself of ministry.
Right.
But guess what? Even in this brokenness, he's still ministering to others. Because I'm telling you, I know there are pastors who probably were able to listen to this. Yeah. They wrote what was going on. They were able to read what was going on. Yeah. And now they're saying, you know what? That's a lesson for me. This guy is teaching me. Yeah. Even though he's broken right now, he's according to him, disqualified for ministry. Right. But yet he's still ministering to others who probably are going through the same thing. Right. So, just as
I think if we step back and look at it from a spiritual standpoint, that there is a devil, there's an enemy, and he has this man in his clutches through this sin. And I don't know what the circumstances were that made him confess. Maybe it came out and he said, I'm not going to excuse it. I did it. Yeah. Or what have you. But it's like, the devil has you, but it's only until you decide to be upfront and deal with it that you can be free.
That's right.
Because it's that secret that, and it actually, let me say this. I think it's important. What Pastor Claudio said, the idea that God can take broken people and make people whole. but you can still be broken,
That's right.
and you can still be lost.
Mm-hmm.
There's a text, and I want to share that text. Let's see here. It is 1 Corinthians. Let me make this go away. That should not be there. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, I believe it's verse 27. Let me go here. This is the Apostle Paul, and he is speaking, and I'm hoping that you can see it on the screen. He says, I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. And what Paul is saying here is that, you know, but what do you mean when you discipline your body? That means that the urges that you have, you say no. You control them. Said, I'm not going to satisfy my urge this way. Because why? Because I could share something that can bless you. God can use me to bless you, but you can still be lost. And so you need to be able to get your life under control. You need to get your life together with God. So I just think that it's powerful stuff. And we urge you, if you're in that situation, that you need to understand it's not just what's going on with your family. Yeah. It's what's going on between you and God. Yeah. And what does it gain a man if he gains the whole world but loses his own soul? Yeah. So that's just powerful.
But we have been talking a little bit about him and what he did and what he was able to accomplish. But what about his wife?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up.
What can we learn from her?
Well, that's excellent. Let me bring this up. So I'm gonna bring up his wife's statement right now. This is his statement. This is what his wife, or at least a portion of her statement. This is Janet Yancey. Janet Yancey, am speaking from a place of trauma and devastation that only people who have lived through betrayal can understand. Yet I made a sacred and binding marriage vow 55 years ago, and I will not break that promise. I accept and understand that God, through Jesus, has paid for and forgiven the sins of the world, including Philip.
Mercy. It's powerful or what?
She is, I don't know, I think I've told you this story before, but I know a couple, and they're probably close to maybe 80 now. Been married for over 50 plus years. A similar situation to this, but the husband, two solid. If you met them today, they are super solid Christians, wonderful people. You think that they're ready for translation because they're just good Christians. But 50 plus years ago, he was running around on his wife, and he was going to church. I mean, he was a Christian, but he cheated on his wife, and the child was the result of that indiscretion. And so he eventually confessed to his wife, and his wife forgave him. Okay, knowing about everything. Yeah. And then there came a point in time when that youngster, I think if I understand it right, I think he was struggling a bit, teenage years, those tough time, and he needed a place to stay. And the husband was still keeping connection with the son, but and he says to his wife, said, "Look, my son is having this problem, this and this. He doesn't even have a place to stay." And you know what that woman said? She said, "Bring him here."
Wow.
So he moved in with them.
Wow.
And when I hear this, every time, I mean,
that's powerful.
Yeah. And he told me there was a time, this is going back a few years ago, when his wife got sick. And sick to where, you're not sure what's going on. This could be like very serious. And he said to me, he says, Miguel, I've made up my mind. I was not faithful to my wife while she was alive, but I promised to be faithful to her after her death.
Wow.
And it's just because what she did moved him so. So what do you think when you read the statement like that? I mean,
well, first of all,
she's not Puerto Rican. I can tell you that. She's not Puerto Rican because that doesn't work. That doesn't work.
It's powerful. It's powerful what she did. But we have to take a look. I feel like there's a couple things.
Yeah, absolutely.
At least, well, she stayed. But if she had chosen to go, if she said, "Well, I'm leaving," that's the Bible actually provides rooms for that to give a guidance. If somebody is unfaithful, you can walk away. There's room for divorce, right?
Right.
But she says, "I'm staying." That is a sign of weakness? She's weak because the fact that she stayed.
Yeah.
Now, leaving is not a sin.
Right.
Staying is not a sign of staying is not a sign of
Well, I
being weak.
would. What's your take? Those of you that are watching, do you think that she should have stayed? Do you think she should have given him a good whooping? I mean,
Yeah,
should
yeah.
she have? Was she wrong to stay? Was she right to stay? Leave something in the comments. I'd love to hear
Yeah,
from you.
yeah. So I feel like she's definitely going through a process here that is not easy. You know, this reconciliation process, and I think we need to understand that, because this reconciliation that she's doing with herself, she said, "I'm not gonna leave you. I'm going to stay with you." That is a process. It's not a moment.
Yeah.
It's not something that, well, I'm just gonna do it. Everything's gonna be okay. It takes time, right? Because after all these years living together, thinking that he was doing one thing and now he's doing the opposite. But she says, I understand this is a process. And she said, I'm devastated from this. I'm broken. She's saying all of these things, which is have all the right to say. But she's saying, I'm staying.
Yeah.
And some people say, well, you are weak. why would you deal with somebody like that,
Yeah. No,
But
it's the opposite.
It's the opposite, right?
Yeah.
But if she had chosen to leave, say, I'm leaving you, that is also, we need to think about it, that this is not a sin.
Right.
Because there's
Yeah.
room in the Bible that says,
Yeah.
somebody's unfaithful,
Sure.
walk away. But she
Right.
says, no,
Right.
I'm staying. So
Right.
she chose to stay. She understands that this is a process that will take time. It's difficult, and you know this.
Yeah.
It's difficult when you stop trusting in people.
Yeah.
How you gain that trust back?
Wow.
To your husband, to your wife, to your sons, to
Well,
your daughters,
what would you
to your
say?
friends.
What would you say?
How long did it take?
Right.
To bring that trust.
Well, let me ask you,
Yeah.
because I always try to be conscious of who may be watching us.
Yeah.
So, what would you say? What would you advise someone? Say in this situation,
Mhm.
say Philip Yancey comes to you and says, "Look, man, I love my wife. I messed up. I don't want to lose her. Da, 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 da. How do I make it up to her? What would be something that you would say to him, of how he can make it up to her? Maybe he can't. Can he not? Is this just he's just going to live with this hanging over his head till the day he dies?
Well, the first thing I would say is that, if you want to make things right, you have to be patient, because again, it's a process. It takes time, and you don't know how long it's actually going to take for that person to say, okay, I'm good. And being patient is also being the opposite side. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
So are you willing to go through that process?
Yeah.
So to that person who said to you, yes, I'm going to forgive you. I'm willing to stay with you, but hey, I need time.
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
willing to say, take all the time you need?
Yeah.
I know that I messed up, but I'm here when you're ready.
Right.
But it's a patient. Do we have the time to?
I agree.
It's not easy.
My thought on that too is I think that's an excellent response. By that, that's awesome. My thing too is I have told people you have to be patient, but you need to be humble, because
That's
what's
right.
probably going to happen is you're going to have good days and bad days.
That's
She's
right.
going to be furious at you one moment.
Yeah.
You don't even know why. At that moment, nothing happened. Nope, it's because she's
Yeah,
processing.
stronger, yeah.
So there are days she loves you. There are days that you're going to feel as if she hates you.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, and unfortunately I've seen this, this idea of making excuses and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
It's like, well, why can't you just forgive me and let's move on?
No,
Let's go
no.
back to normal. So that's the
That's the
stupidest thing that
worst
you could do.
ever you can say. That's
You
right.
you need to, it's like you're gonna have to make your whole life an open book.
Yeah.
There's no password on my phone that you don't know. There's nothing on my computer you don't know. If I'm like, you have to change everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably meaningful to his wife to stop, to quit, to retire, and say, you know what? For the rest of my life, I'm going to live trying to make this up to you. You are my audience. I have an audience of one. Not all this stuff doesn't mean anything. And so there is what you said, patience.
Yeah.
You need to be humble, and you need to be an open book from now on. If you want to retain your pride and keep talking to your friends and keep things, act like everything's fine and go back to normal, that's a stupid idea. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
And you're just basically going to prolong the agony for both of you.
Yeah. I also believe that, when people say, well, I forgive you, forgiveness. We deal with this concept. That doesn't mean people are really willing to they will not just delete everything that happened.
Yeah.
They will not just forget.
Right.
I know, forgive and forget. I know we wrestle with that and we talk about it.
Right.
But the reality is that, yes, you can choose to forgive somebody, but the idea that you still remember some of the things that they did, it's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
How you deal with that idea of, and that is when I think about this idea of forgiveness and forgetting, the only one who can really look at us when we do something wrong and he will choose not to remember what we did is Jesus.
Yeah.
It's God.
Yeah.
I
see a little bit of God in her.
I definitely,
Right?
right? Because the idea of, I forgive you. I forgive you. Well, let's move on. But there will be times that she will remember some of these things.
Yeah.
But there is how you bring that. You bring that to the table every day.
Yeah.
It's a true forgiveness. You really,
Right.
it's just some of these things
Mm.
that we need to consider.
I think one of the things that is probably especially when you're in a situation like this, is you need to understand what is forgiveness.
Mhm.
So in this case, to a person, say a man, a man steps out on his wife. To a man, it might mean forgiving means that you're gonna forget what I did, and we can give me a second chance to start over again.
Yeah.
I'm starting fresh.
Yeah.
Well, that's not what forgiveness is.
That's right.
Forgiveness usually means that I refuse to punish you for what you did that was wrong.
Mhm.
So, in other words, I will not punish you for what you did. And so, I'm thinking about this in the Christian context. What does it mean when God forgives you? There is a thing, we talk about in the Bible where it says that he'll take our sins and throw them into the
Mhm.
depths of the sea. And it's a little bit different in the sense that God is saying, I forgive you, meaning I will not punish you for what you have done. And he can say, I will look at you as if you never did anything wrong. But that comes at the price of the death and the blood of Jesus.
That's right.
But in human relationships, nobody died for you and
Mhm.
for this. You
Yeah,
get what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah.
It's like God can forgive you as if you've never sinned. The human being will forgive you, but what are they saying? They're saying, I'm not going to punish you for what you did wrong. We're going to move forward. But forgiving does not mean forgetting.
That's right.
And you might say that if you're going to forget, then I mean, is that's not a sign of strength?
Mhm.
So you have some reparation to make. You have some winning to do. For a man or whoever, if you cheated and you think that forgiving means, well, let's just drop it. Let's start over again.
Yeah.
No, that stuff doesn't go away. It
Yeah.
takes time. So I want to change gears here as we kind of bring to a close this whole notion
Yep.
of the spiritual aspect. So for the person that messed up, is there redemption with God? And I want to give you I want to share one more Bible text
Yeah.
here before we wrap up, but I want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything that you want to say more on this subject before we kind of wrap this thing up?
Well, I think, again, just talking about the idea of forgiveness, because I think it's something that we see clearly here. Confession and forgiveness is that forgiveness is a decision. You need to decide. You need to decide if you want to. It's not a feeling. It's not something. Well, I feel like I'm going to do this today. Well, no, it's a decision that you need to live up the rest of your life.
Yeah,
Because you have
yeah.
decided to do this. So it's a decision, and also because you choose to forgive, that doesn't mean that you cannot deny pain. You cannot hide that there's moments that you feel pain, that you feel upset, and it's important for us to understand that, right? Because sometimes we put this shield. Oh, I'm strong, and everything is okay, and I'm walking with him, or I'm walking with her. It doesn't matter what they did, and well,
Yeah.
yes, that sounds okay, but really, we cannot deny that we are going through some moments of pain, being it's painful. It's painful. We
That's
need to
right.
acknowledge that, and we need to have boundaries still. That does not remove boundaries. from us. We need to protect ourselves. And I feel like this is a great story actually when you think about it. There's so many things that we can talk.
Yeah.
But the idea of understanding that forgiveness is a decision, just like love. You don't just say, "Well, I'm love you. I'm going to stay with you forever." Whatever. It doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah.
It's a decision to
Yeah.
stay with that person,
That's
whether
right.
they're good or bad, or when they're messed up or not. You choose to do that. It's a decision.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that I just want to reflect on. What decisions are we making today?
Right. Well, I would like to kind of end the podcast with a couple of words as well. One is let me speak to two people. Okay, to the person who has been cheated on. So, for example, if your heart has been broken by the actions of someone that you've put your heart into, and that is this, that your heart can feel like it's been shattered in a million pieces, like a piece of glass when you take a hammer to it, and if I said to you, put that back together again, you're going to say that's impossible. That can never be put back together again. I'm here to tell you that if your heart feels like it's been broken in a million pieces, it can be put back together.
Yeah.
I think of this example of this lady, Philip Yancey's wife, Janet. I don't know them personally, but I'm just so impressed by her. She is able to at least attempt to move forward. But the only reason she can do that is because of the impact that Jesus Christ has made in her life.
Mm.
You cannot heal your relationship if Jesus is not a part of it. So maybe something horrible has happened to you, something is broken, but it's an opportunity to draw closer to Jesus and to allow him, as you draw closer to him, and of course your spouse, then he will draw you together and he will heal. He will do the impossible.
Yes,
right?
that's
He can
right.
heal broken people. He can heal broken marriages. But I also want to talk to the person that, you hear a story like this and it's like, well, I'm acting like I'm not listening because it doesn't impact me. But really, it is impacting you because you're doing it. This is you.
Yeah.
This is going to be you, because when you get found out, you're going to have to deal with the fallout. And that is that maybe you're afraid. I love the word you said at the beginning, bravery. Maybe you're afraid because you're afraid you're going to lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you've gotten comfortable to what you have. But basically, you're living a lie. And that lie one day will come out. It's hard to keep these things quiet. But let me say this to you, that just like a broken marriage can be healed, a broken person can be restored.
Yeah.
And not only can God do a miracle and restore your marriage, God can do a miracle and restore you to him.
That's right.
So doesn't matter what you've done. David, King David, he saw a woman, he desired her, called her to his castle, had an affair with her, got her pregnant, covered it up with murder. Okay, all those things. But yet God was able to forgive him. I want to share one Bible verse to end, and that's comes from 1 John chapter 1, verse 9. It says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So today, Pastor Claudio and I, we say right together that there's nothing so bad that God cannot fix.
That's right.
There's nothing so broken that God can't heal.
That's right.
And you see an example in the way these two people reacted to a really bad decision by the husband here in this case. But hopefully we can learn some lessons from it, right?
That's right.
So, Pastor Claudio.
Well, thank you for having me once again. I really appreciate this conversation, and remember that this last test that we just saw is something powerful. The Bible is clear, and it says, if we confess our sin, God is able to do something amazing in us. He will give us the freedom that we need. He will give us the opportunity to walk away, understanding that I can walk, with my heads up, understanding that His forgiveness, that His love never ends, that He's there, always there for us. So I hope that today we learn that when we confess, God is there. It doesn't matter how hard it is, how difficult, or how bad we feel, the things that we have done. It does not matter. God does not, have different sins. Okay, for that sins, I'll do this. For that sin, no, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If we sin, He's able to.
Amen. No matter
remove.
how bad it
It
is.
doesn't matter how bad it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, look, I appreciate you for being with me. Thank you for being a part of this episode with us. Again, let me hear from you. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. But I'd love to hear from you. What do you think about this story? Do you think Philip Yancey should have stepped down, or should he have stayed doing what he was doing, since he's still doing such good for people. What do you think about his wife? Is she strong for staying with her husband, or is she weak for staying with her husband?
Yeah.
And so would love to hear your comments. God bless you, and we will see you next time. Hey, before you go, I want to invite you to become a digital missionary. You can do that by taking the link for this podcast and emailing it to a friend, or taking the link to this podcast and posting it on your own social media feeds. In doing that, you'll be sharing the good news with your community and your world, and they'll thank you for it.
Auburn, lift your voice and see.